everyone who is joining us. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Eunice. I'm one of the co-founders at Ishango, and I will be telling you a little bit more about Ishango in a minute. Today, we are going to be having a conversation I'm really excited about because it's very close to my heart. It's data for impact. So a little bit about myself. I've worked in the tech for sustainable development space for the last 12 years. So I've run projects looking at how tech and innovation can contribute to the sustainable development goals across over 7 African countries. I'm now based in London, and really my work is about how to connect the African tech and innovation ecosystem to global markets. And Ishango really ties in with that. I'm going to have a really cool panel joining me to have this conversation today, looking at how within their own organizations, they are leveraging data science to create a positive impact in the world. And we all know we're living in a time where that is important. We're thinking about the fact that we are a global community, the fact that we are facing some really big challenges of our time, and the technology, data science, AI, machine learning, all of these tools are going to be critical in really creating and reshaping the future that we all want to see. So welcome, and yeah, please feel free to join in the discussion by sending in your questions. So I'll just start off with a quick intro of Ishango and who we are before I will then welcome our panelists. So Ishango, we are the bridge between Africa's top talent in data science and global businesses. So what are we doing? We run a data science fellowship program. This is a 2-month fellowship where we take top graduates with backgrounds in mathematics, computer science, engineering, and we're giving them the opportunity to build their technical and professional skills in order to build a career in data science by giving them the opportunity to work on real-world practical projects for global companies. So really, we're seeing that the future of work is being reshaped. The world is becoming very global. Remote working is really the future of work. And we want to leverage this to make sure that talented data scientists in Africa have access to opportunities to work wherever they want to work, adding value and helping to shape data science, building solutions around the world. So how does our program work? Basically, we find projects with host companies. So these are companies that that care about building, data science potential in Africa, creating an impact, but that are leveraging data and have a data challenge that our fellows can add value to. We work with them to define a project because our program is 8 weeks. So we want to have something that our fellows can work on that provides a tangible output and value for companies. We then very carefully select the best graduates. Our last cohort had 14 fellows from 7 different African countries. 50% of them were women, which is something, again, that we really care about around supporting gender equity within STEM and data science. We take them through a rigorous selection process, including technical assessments, interviews with senior data scientists, and then we match projects to fellows. So we're trying to find a fit where fellows are passionate about a certain sector, whether it's data science and agri-tech, for example, or building a certain career path. And we want to support them in that by finding a project that can help them to develop their interests. And then we host an 8-week program via a residential. So last year, our residential was in Kigali, Rwanda, which was hosted at the AIMS campus, which is the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences. And for these 8 weeks, the fellows focus on delivering these projects for their host companies. And they're supported by a senior data scientist or data scientist in residence to help them deliver the highest quality standard of work. So this year, so that was our first fellowship that we did last year. And this year we're running 2 fellowships, one in Ghana from June to July, and one in Rwanda again in September, November. And lastly, I'll say we work through collaboration, both from the universities that provide these opportunities to their fellows, to lots of mentors who volunteer their time to share their expertise with our fellows, to our host companies that are providing projects and supporting fellows to develop their skills and giving them opportunities. So these are just a few of the ways you can partner with us. If you have a data science project and you'd like some really bright talent, to discover some bright talent across Africa to add value to your organization, you can speak to us. You can volunteer as a mentor, deliver an expert talk and data science topic, or provide soft skills training and career guidance to our fellows. Or you can become an education partner and really help us make this opportunity available to your students and graduates and help them boost their skills, boost their employability, and sort of unlock careers in data science. So that's us. That's Ishango in a nutshell. Please do feel free to reach out. Our website, very handily, is in our name. So it's Ishango.ai. And there you can find more information on our last cohort, the project they worked on, and some of the impact they had for the companies where they were hosted. So now for the main event, without further ado, I'd like to just quickly introduce our panelists. I'll actually ask them to introduce themselves or just sort of mention who's coming to join us today. So with me today, I'm going to have Kunal Shah, who is a Senior Product Manager at SAS. Mary Grace Villanueva, who is the Director on Strategy Business Development at Data Innovators, and Marinella Profi, who is an AI Marketing Manager and Data Scientist at SAS Institute. So thank you all so much for taking the time to be a part of this conversation. It's timely, it's important, and we can't wait to hear about the different work that you're doing. So I would just like to start with you, Kunal. Just do a quick introduction about yourself and kind of the work you're doing, and I guess why for you this conversation is pertinent, really.
Sure. Thanks, Eunice. First of all, thank you for hosting us and inviting us to this very important conversation. I know a lot of data scientists across the world are really interested in learning more about how data science is applied to the industry, and I'm happy to kind of contribute to some of the conversations around it and how we are using data science across industries. So a little bit of background about me. I've spent more than a decade working with organizations, both public and private, to harness the power of data, modernize their legacy systems, and just run their not before the data whole data science became a big deal. There was all about creating data programs, data transformation initiatives. So I've run that. Uh, Currently, I am a product manager at SAS, especially around leading the marketing efforts for data engineering products at SAS. But before joining the product side, I worked in consulting and implementation, working with clients all across the industries, especially around banking, consumer goods, healthcare, manufacturing, utilities, public sector. So I have seen projects all across the spectrum of data transformation, data science, and AI. And I'm happy to, share my thoughts today.
Thanks, Kunal. Welcome. Could we go with you next, Marinella?
Sure. Hi, Eunice. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and thanks for organizing this chat. I'm very much looking forward to share my thoughts and my experience and hear from the other speakers, as well as take the questions from the people that have joined us. My name is Marinella. I've worked in the data science. I'm a data scientist. I've worked in the data science industries for more than 5 years. My focus has been more around analytics and AI, and especially with forecasting, prediction, and optimization. I've worked with companies from banking, from retail, manufacturing, financial institutions. So getting to experience that diverse goals and objectives of different in flavor and the impact that data scientists can have in different industries. And today I work at SAS together with Kunal. I am responsible for the marketing strategy products for our solutions around model ops. And so how do we deploy the models? How do we operationalize the models to really be able to not just let them in our computer, but actually give them the possibility to create value and impact.
Amazing. Thank you, Marinella. And last but not least, Mary Grace.
Hi, thank you, Eunice, and thank you, everyone. My name is Mary Grace. I'm the Director for Strategy and Business Development at Data Innovators. I'm not a data scientist, so I'm happy to be with all of you data scientists today. So I'm here in South Africa, and I've been here for over 20 years, working mostly in the education space. My background in PhD is in education, but I got into really diving into data to see how it could actually help to improve education in the country and actually across the globe. So that's been my interest. I've come from academia, working in the South African government, and then also the private sector in consulting management. And yeah, so at Data Innovators, we do focus on the development sector, and we help organizations push the data boundaries and really think about it in a manner that will transform and hopefully quickly, or have the evidence to be able to do so in a time and space where it counts when it matters, not down the line, but in real time. So thank you.
Really, that's really cool. And yeah, I can't wait to sort of delve a bit more into some of the stuff you've done at the intersection of all those different sectors. I'm not a data scientist either. I'm starting to pick up a bit of lingo. Like I could maybe in a meeting drop a thing here and there and fake it a bit, but yeah, definitely not. Yeah, I wanted to start with you, Marinella. Just as preparing for this talk, I kind of followed you. You're very active on LinkedIn. You're very, sort of a data science activist almost, I would say. You're clearly very passionate about data science, and I know you curate a newsletter called New Heights in Data Science. Tell us a bit about that, and also really what drives this passion for data science and how you see it really being sort of crucial for solving some of the global challenges we see today.
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. My passion for data science has it goes back since when I was a child. I've always been passionate about numbers, statistics, and all that. And the reason for me, it's always been because I think that data is, one of the most powerful mechanisms that we have today of telling our story as humans in this world, right? If we go back in the human history, how have we as human beings tell our story? How have we shared our beliefs, our culture, our values, and what we liked, what we didn't like with the future generations? People used to use art, paintings, books. That's what we have, as their presence in the world. Well, I'm pretty sure that data is what will be used the most to describe our traits to future generations, right? What we like, what we buy, how did we dress, where do we like to travel, what are our values, how we interact with other humans. And we might like it or not, but all these aspects can be extracted and are included in the data that we produce every day. And so to me, data have always been like words, right? They can be used to communicate, to convince someone about something, to predict the future, to tell a story, and sometimes even, to lie. So learning how to analyze data and how to interact with data, to me, means having a extraordinary power in our hands. And I'm speaking to all my data science peers and friends that are listening to us. We speak a universal language that keeps growing in its power every day. And this fascinating side of data, seen as a source to speak to the world and understand the world, is what has driven my passion for the field. My newsletter, the idea was really born. I read this paper from the psychiatric William Glasser. He developed the choices theory, and he said that we learn the 10% of what we read, the 20% of what we see, the 80% of what we experience, but we learn the 95% of what we teach to others. And so for me, sharing what I am learning is not only a way to foster inclusion, but also in social progress, but also to learn better. And this is an advice that, as a data scientist, I give to all the people that are out there trying to start their career. As you learn, share that knowledge through, digital channels, because that will help you learn better as well as leave your trace in the world and create those connections that will help you make a difference. And so, yeah.
Thanks so much for that. I think there's a lot you were saying that kind of demystified data and data science. Like, it's about telling our story, like you're saying, about our time. And that's something that working on Ishango, I've really seen, like looking at the projects our fellows have worked on, something about being able to predict sort of mental health, occurrences based on the data and, history of patients, or, predicting hydropower failures. Like, it's just, I think before being in the space, it was always like this, it's numbers and spreadsheets, and it's really for like the geeks. And now you really see, like, behind the numbers, it's really about telling the story. I remember reading about the project that one of our technical advisors was working on about the pandemic and how it changed people's movements and transport, and all of that's going to be looked at in the future about how we responded and how we design spaces better or transport better. So thanks for that. I thought that was quite a really good sort of way to start. And plug for the newsletters, New Heights in Data Science. Look up Marinella if you'd like to learn more about that. I wanted to move to you, Kunal. One of the things that I've seen from your background is that you've really been working at this intersection between business and technology. So bringing in the conversation of business, the role of business in solving, global challenges. I know that's also, there's a lot of questions out there, like, what is the role of business? Can business really be a tool for social impact and social good, or are they, always going to sort of look out for the interest of business? But what have you seen from, the space you've worked in, on how business is using technology, is using data science for social impact, and sort of what are your thoughts on the potential for that, for businesses leveraging data and data science for positive impact?
Thanks for the question, Eunice. Definitely. I mean, so like, it's been more than 10, 12 years that I worked in the data side of things. So far, I think, at least for the initial 4 or 5 years, what I've seen were the use cases around data science, data analytics, was more around just how we use data science to help better business outcomes, maximize profit. But then eventually you started understanding that you can leverage this data to not just solve business problems, but at the same time you can solve social impact problems. You can make a difference in the world, not just by it's not always about creating profits or making money out of data, right? And so there are a couple of different ways that I've seen businesses can help, you know, in terms of helping the data science and help data science for impact. And I'll go, I'll give you a brief highlight about that. First of all, it's more about businesses can help support behind the scenes work that makes data science effective. Now, what I mean by that is, data scientists, data analysts, data engineers, whoever works with data, they spend half of their time just, cleaning the data, organizing the data. And too often, what happens is the social sector organizations, they don't have this manpower or resources to help standardize these data sources. So what businesses can do is they can, elevate the awareness around how to standardize and organize the data. And whoever groups, I mean, every business have some kind of a funding group that they help support some form of social imperative. So what they can do is they can require the funding group or whoever they are supporting require some kind of adhere to a unified global standards. So that's one way businesses can help uh, in terms of leveraging data and how data science practices can be worked for social sector practice. Um, the other the other thing is uh, what happens is a lot of these businesses work with nonprofits and they are supporting the nonprofits. Now, they often provide data or they often provide the infrastructure to support the nonprofits or the social impact organizations. Uh, but what happens is, yes, you provided all the data, you provided all the infrastructure, but there you need experts to actually work with all those resources, and that's where the gap really is. Uh, so to really help the civil society organizations address the skill gap, what companies or the businesses what they can do is they can make digital contributions by training data scientists in a coordinated fashion across companies in terms of making them understanding what are the work culture structures and the constraints of a specific nonprofit is or a social impact organization is. The other thing is they can, even help, uh, continue funding uh, the uh, data science talent to nonprofits in a longer term engagement. So every company now you see they have some form of data science for social good arm within their organizations. And what they're really doing right now is they're providing the data sets, they're providing their tools to help, but they can also provide their expertise, their own resources for a longer term basis. Uh, to help the social sector understand how they can leverage the data. And uh, I'll give you two examples in terms of how this has really changed and how this is really applied in the industry right now. The first example I'm going to talk about is the refugee placement in Switzerland. Um, so what happened is data scientists from the Immigration Policy Lab at Stanford University and ETH Zurich. They used historical data on where refugees found jobs to build an algorithm that optimizes the placement of incoming refugees. Now, what this happens is what they are trying to do is they are piloting this algorithm in Switzerland and then guiding Swiss immigration officials to make more efficient placements. Now, this is one of with a very small example, a very important example of how high quality machine learning science or data science models can be turned into a useful product that not only improves decision making, but ultimately benefits people's lives. And the other example, but an example that I'm really passionate about and that I really feel is a great example that needs to be shared with all the people here or just across the world is um, the innovative use of AI for women's financial inclusion. Now, um, I don't know if you know that currently female entrepreneurs are more likely to get lower premiums, higher rates, higher interest rates, and increased penalties for mistakes due to out-of-date gender-biased models uh, in the lending practices where mortgage companies are developing these models. So it's almost like 1 billion women remain outside the financial system today. And the solution for this is particularly important because it can help the emerging markets have more financial inclusion for women as well. So what there's a organization called Women's World Banking. What they're doing is they're exploring the implications of AI-based modeling, uh, you know, and basically credit scoring on women's financial inclusion. What they're trying to do is they are trying to assess how algorithms in digital credit applications can increase lending to women borrowers and help them study the application of machine learning and AI to help get them more better rates, better inclusion into the financial system, and help them really be successful in what endeavors they are really getting into. Um, and even like for say SAS, we are doing a lot of data for good initiatives. We have like a whole uh, department under data for good, and you can. I'm not gonna just plug in SaaS here, just trying to Uh, market SaaS here, but it's just like every company right now, they are working in some way or the other, especially the tech companies, to not only help the social sector in providing data and the computing resources, but also they are lending their expert scientists or the data scientists or the data practitioners to help them get into the ground level and actually come up with use cases that can help solve the problems.
Thanks, Mara. And I want to bring you both in, Marinella and Mary Grace, on this because I think it's quite a hot topic within sort of data science and companies. And now some of the things you're saying, you brought up something that I would could say points to data ethics. So the idea that we've had the phrase data is the new oil, and companies, businesses having sort of started the data science movement, to sort of optimize business and business processes. And now we're seeing that shift, like you've been talking about, Kumal, on these broader applications and impact applications. But one is, what are your thoughts, Marinella and Mary Grace, on this in terms of, how do we accelerate that power shift? I think, in the way data science developed from business, and now we need to sort of democratize it a lot more, particularly in sectors. And really curious to hear your take, Mary Grace, because you're, working on in the development sector. And two, on the other side of data ethics, things like gender bias, we're talking about, in algorithms and things. So just wanted you both to comment a bit on this topic of business leveraging data for social good. Maybe we'll start with you, Mary Grace.
Sure. Thanks. That's a really good point. And I think what we are and what we've been trying to do here is getting more businesses, and they are actually our social investment partners. How do they also share data? So it's the data that they sometimes collect as part of their business, but also the data that they collect if it's a social impact intervention, right? That works with specific communities. But you have one organization or one business here, another one there. How do we start to get to a point where we we get people to openly share this information so that there's a richer picture of what's happening on the ground? So yeah, and we're very big with working with public-private partnerships and these and the civil society organizations, because I think we are collecting data in piecemeal and in pockets, but it's not providing a full picture. And I think there's, and I mean, one of the questions for me was, what are those opportunities, for the development space? And I mean, I think, having that, the data sharing and the data integration and the intelligence and the insight that can come to the fore would really help. But I think part of the data sharing is a critical issue.
Yeah, would you like to chip in on that, Marinella?
Yeah, sure. So I think that business and data for impact. So businesses have always. I think that businesses have collaborated with data in two different ways. One is they use data to optimize their own productivity, their own efficiency. The other one is, as Kunal was saying, to bring some positive and something back to the community. And to me, the turning point of that happened in 2015 when, the United Nations, they set out the plan to, tackle some of the world's most pressing global challenges by 2030. We have these 17 sustainable development goals. And I think that, I think that was really a turning point for organizations and collectively academics, businesses, NGOs, and governments to mobilize themselves and their leadership and their skills and their resources to say, okay, we can and we should bring a positive impact. But as you said, there is this ethical and this topic of responsible AI. And this is not just something futuristic. Like right now, if you go on Google, there is AI incident database. And this is open. Everyone can go and you can see that if you take the data, and I did that, and you put them on a graph, you can see that after in the past 3 years, and maybe we can say that the global COVID and the increase of digitalization helped increasing that. But in the past 3-4 years, the number of AI incidents have been exponentially increased. So that tells us that we still have challenges around lack of quality data and around the morality aspect of it. There are some techniques that we can use from a data science perspective. Now, I don't want to get too much technical, but there are some techniques and some KPIs that we can use to understand if a model or if some data science project is being biased and is being fair. One thing is for sure, to me, will be very important that stakeholders need to have open conversations about the ethical dimensions of the technology and take appropriate action. First should be ensuring algorithms are properly trained. And for example, one, Kunal mentioned, income and financial things. There are actually, there are some cases where income is shouldn't be, but it's closely correlated from a data standpoint, right? Because data tell a story. So there are cases where data tell you that income is correlated with another characteristic, such as ethnicity. And so how do we make sure that we mitigate the impact on decision-making when one aspect, like income, is correlated to an aspect such as ethnicity, even when this characteristic is not explicitly coded? Right? So it's very important that we avert bias, and because AI is a future, but is not immune to human bias. Yeah.
Is there anything happening in the space around kind of a central place to sort of hold, the algorithms and AI, machine learning algorithms that are being developed to account to to check for bias? Is there anything like that sort of developing in the space that any of you know about?
I can chime in. I can start. So what I've seen is that there is a lot of conversation happening. So there is a lot of recognition that this is important and we need to do something about it. Of course, government plays a key role here with legislations and policies, and there is a differentiating. I'm seeing a different movement according to different, continents. I am not, my first language is not English. I am Italian, Albanian origins. And in Europe, for example, we have the GDPR, right? That has had a huge impact on how businesses can use the data. From a action perspective, I'm seeing a lot of organizations taking independent, autonomous action. Like, for example, the company that I work for, they have established their data ethics department, where they make sure, they control that everything is happening appropriately. And so I'm seeing a lot of actions being taken by organizations separately and autonomously, of course, in conjunction with government. And that I would hope to see more and more in this space as we move forward. And especially as we, use data for more and more things and more causes, and especially when it's related to healthcare and things like climate change and sustainability. I think we should have some great, precise policy and overall shared practice that everyone agrees on how to say something is ethical versus is not.
And Mary Grace, because I know you're working, across government and private sector, are you seeing a move towards some kind of regulatory environment?
Yes, we are, but I wanted to go back to one point. I think, Marinella, I agree with your points full on. I do. I think where my maybe discomfort a little bit is that there is a large population, a large portion of the country here who are not who are not connected. Who where data is being collected, businesses or in government, it's being collected by people, but there's no very much opportunity for everyday users to engage in engage in data. So it feels like a very one way, or a two-way street without the people who could benefit from either access or engagement or having their stories told properly. And that's where I think that's just a big issue
Mm.
that requires tackling. But in terms of our policies and data protection, we are seeing lots of changes here, and but I think not to the extent of how AI is being used. So it's very much still personal, personal protection of personal data. I mean, data protection for personal information, and that's also that's just rolled out a few years ago. So last year, actually, it was enacted. Yeah.
Mm. And that's a really, just going back to the inclusivity that you were talking about, who has access, who is making decisions. Let's segue into your work, Mary Grace, because you're working with data innovators and you're really helping the development sector to leverage data. I think, like we talked a little bit about data from a business perspective. I've worked in the development sector. That is,
Mm,
where my heart is, but I know we're often behind in a lot of, especially when it
right.
comes to adopting innovation. So tell me a little bit about the work you're doing, the potential for data within development, some of the challenges you're seeing. Like, I think you started to hint on that around the inclusion and access and stuff. Just to, bring that perspective for us. Thank
Sure. I think to build on some of the business side of things, and um, Kunal mentioned also the work with NGOs. We're really, when we come in from more of an M&E perspective, and it's looking at, there's a lot of international and national funders here in South Africa who supplement, who supplement the social wage and social services, if we put it that way. Um, Here in South Africa and in a lot of countries, we know that education, health, early childhood development, the government fiscus is it's a big portion of the government fiscus, but yet we're not seeing a lot of change that's happening on the ground. And our corporate social investors uh, try to assist in that regard with more interventions. What we are really trying to do is see how those resources. How those resources are being used and um, how they can shape if we're actually moving the needle in education, if we're moving the needle in early childhood development. It's one thing to put money towards something. If you keep doing it again and again and again, and you're not seeing anything move, then something is obviously not working correctly. So we are at that intersection of implementation on the ground, our corporate social investors or international donors, and then also government to really take a look at that data and to see, uh, are we making any progress? Are we making any change? Any of the resource provision that is happening, does it actually help to children in rural South Africa? So so that's part of the work that we do. Um, yeah, and as we're speaking right now, like there, the early childhood development function is moving from one government department to another, and you can imagine what that. It's called the function shift. You can imagine what that shift is like from an operations perspective, but from a data and information perspective. And we are working towards, one of the, and again, we've got a lot of social partners that we work with, something like early childhood development services. Like, so if I'm a creche or a play school or a small preschool, how do I register my institution so that I can access government support, I can access resources. Uh, we know we can make provision for the number of children who are going to move into the basic education sector, and with 54 million people, it's very onerous task, and sometimes in our provincial settings, it's also siloed. So, where I see the opportunities for data science is, how can we, yeah, how can we kind of leverage this data that we're collecting from different government departments, from different provinces, and many different aspects, so that we get I don't want to call it like a profile. Well, it is a profile of people or services or anything that's happening, and we can make decisions that trickle down to the people that need it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We have just a couple of more minutes before I invite people to ask their questions. We've touched on quite a few things, and I think overall, at least from my Shango perspective, and also what a lot of you have said, who makes the decisions, who has access is important. It's going to continue to be important when we talk about when we talk about bias. We're seeing like these algorithms are sort of taking what is already existing for us, in society, and sort of replicating that, and thinking about how we make data science and the impacts of that more inclusive to everybody. So my last question to you, and let's start with you, Kunal, because we haven't heard from you in a bit, is why, from your perspective, is diversifying and including more people in the creation and development of data science really important from your perspective of where you sit? Kunal, do you wanna?
Definitely, yeah. So I think what Marinella mentioned earlier regarding the ethical use of algorithms. What happens is uh, algorithms at the end of the day they are built by humans. So if we and humans inherently have biases. I mean, no matter what kind of initiatives you work or uh, how much open you are with the helping the world's problems, you still have biases. You cannot take out those biases if you inherently have biases, and it can come into your work as well. So one way to do it is hiring more diverse crowd from different walks of life, and having the different kind of background really helps solve that problem. One example is, let's say, for example, if you are building like let's say a job search platform, and you recommend candidates for that search, and if most of the data to the algorithm is uh, trained with just having male white candidates, the algorithm will end up just recommending the same candidates. So what happens is you need to have diverse people to actually write the code and have them collect the data. That what happens is inherently what they will do is they will see whether the data is diverse enough or the data itself has enough variability to go on and recommend and predict better, in this case, better candidates. Now again, uh, no algorithm or team is perfect. So I think my recommendation, and a lot of teams, especially in the tech sector, they're doing is they are hiring more and more people in the data science organizations or model building or algorithm writing or code development teams to have a different set of skill sets rather than just having, a typical. I mean, yes, data science skills, you need to have some background, but having representation across minorities, uh, you know, uh, different. I mean, a diverse team really helps make a better prediction of whatever model you're building.
Marina, do you wanna chip in?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I agree with all the points that have being brought up from my colleagues here. I think that the inclusivity. One thing that I would add is that the inclusivity of AI and Mary Grace briefly touched on this before. To me, will really start when the development sector will be provided with the supported infrastructure that it's needed. For me, from my perspective, what I've seen, and Mary Grace can bring her perspective and experience from Africa. I can tell you, Italy has the same issue. There is a lack of supportive infrastructure, and there are different researchers out there that have proved this. Citizens are digitally excluded. They are not, and this could be due, in some cases could be due to poverty, so related to economic situation, in some cases to a lack of digital literacy. But for me, as we build the next generation workforce and, places, things like Ishango, for example, and other are already contributing in that, in creating and giving those STEM skills. In parallel, we need to also be able to create users of the AI tools, because otherwise we will create something for which, we will create an offer for which there will be short demand. If you read at the data, three quarters of the people in the 46 less developed countries in the world have never been online. And so I think that once the first step for me to reach that inclusivity is to allow those people to go online and use AI tool. And the government are going to have a critical role on this. So that's where, to me, inclusivity starts. Development sector, support, having places that have a supported infrastructure that they can use to access data, which is the very first, most basic step, but usually the biggest problem.
And Mary Grace, do you want to close us off just on that?
Yeah, sure. That's why I think that's how I got to know Shango, to be honest with you. We were looking for data scientists to help with some of our tech, and we were adamant that we were going to find them in Africa. And so that's why, I really support the work that Shango's doing, and Shimlogong here in Joburg, and I'm sure in other places as well, that are really doing they're doing their part in terms of fellowships and building data scientists that hopefully stay stay in the continent or give back and give back somehow. They people understand the context, and and I think it's also the role modeling also that needs to that's also a critical factor in really elevating data science for the development space. So yeah.
Thank you so much. You have a knack for like throwing in something. I'm like, oh, we could go there. It's like extend the conversation. Don't start on like the brain drain and like all of that. But we'll have a whole other
that's another panel discussion.
That's all another. I've realized you're that panelist, the one who is always like let's dig deeper. There's more in there. Sure. It's been a pleasure to have you all joining us today. I'll allow for audience questions. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes for audience questions. So I think we had a few. If we see what's out there. First question: how can we, as African students and data science enthusiasts, be part of a revolution on our continent? What concrete actions can we take? What expectations? Over to you, Mary Grace.
Yes. I think, well, I can answer that on many levels. People, any professional, and African students as data science, you're professional, and you work wherever you need to work. We all have our bills, right? But I think I think the other part is the continuous contribution to the dialogue. So what was discussed today in terms of the inclusivity, in terms of who is AI used for, the continue wherever you are in your professional career, continue in those discussions. I think that's probably that's the one thing. Gosh, I just got so excited about the question that I forgot about my answer. But what are concrete actions we can take, and what are the expectations? I know a lot of programs ask for mentors. Be that mentor. If there are data sources or findings that you think are important to to different populations or countries or governments on the continent share them. It's almost like Marianelle's newsletter or blog, or like make it known. Make it known that those stories are there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. Discourse is so important in shaping, reality. And I think for us, I think more than anything, the thing that I find really exciting about Ishango is when these companies come back and they be like, oh my God, I can't believe like this talent's been sitting in, and we didn't know about it. I think, like you're saying, it's telling those stories. And yeah, I think discourse is a really important thing, concrete step that we can all take is shaping a discourse, sharing those stories, Africans leading and developing data science tools. So thank you for that.
I would like to share one, just to what Mary Grace
Yeah, go ahead.
talked about the first question, what concrete actions can we take? And I mean, there's a lot of talent everywhere, especially in Africa. And I know it's hard to kind of reach out of all the businesses, but one way you can really, brush up your skills and really raise your profile is take part in like the Kaggle or Kaggle challenges, or there's a lot of hackathons happening around all the companies, or just different organizations. Take part in it, because the more you take part in it, two things happens. One, you get experience, you understand, you get real data sets, you get experience, and then second, you get mentors that you can work with and build connections. And with that, you can actually, enhance your career skills, but at the same time, you learn in the process. So it's really helpful to take part of both different hackathons or competitions would really help raise your profile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Sorry, I was trying to plug one of our partners is called Zindi. Please look them up. They're also another platform for solving data science challenges and just building your skills in Africa. Sorry, Manuela, any advice for budding data scientists in Africa?
Yeah, so I wanted to add that focus on practical. That is the most important thing. So always stay practical. In addition to of course learning, there are a lot of open data out there. Experiment, find a mentor. I'm happy to help as I can, and put your work out there. I was reading the other day this 21 years old guy from Sierra Leone. He developed this innovative solution that turns people's steps, people walking, take the vibrations and turns it into electricity. So, and imagine, if that gets scaled, the impact that could have in a country like Sierra Leone, where I imagine, there is the transportation and everything. People move a lot, and it's not like in US we have a car for everywhere we go. So that could have a very impact. So I think that stay curious, stay passionate, and always be practical. From a technical standpoint, I have to be the data scientist here. To me, there are many people talk about what is the first skill that I should learn? What is the first thing that where should I start from? It can be intimidating starting in data science. My 2 cents, it's start by learning statistics. That is the number one thing for me. You can learn Python, you can learn a programming language. And by the way, once you've picked one, stick with it. Don't start learning Java, C++, and 1 week of this and 1 week of that. And then after a month, you're like, oh my God, I hate this. Pick a language, stick with it, but learn statistics. Data science is statistics. A lot is about understanding the data, how to analyze them, and that is the most important thing. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Yes, that's some really great advice there. And I guess from our Ishango perspective, in terms of like the applications we see, we got over 600 applications for our cohort. We only have 14 places. But share your work on your GitHub. Like sometimes people either don't have a GitHub or they have a GitHub and it's empty. Like anything you do, even if it's this cool little app that you build just for yourself, just put it up there, because like Marinella was saying, it's about the practical. So yeah, just a tip for anyone who's considering applying. Next question: what aspect of data science? what is this aspect of data science on which we should focus as a priority and urgently in Africa?
Who wants to start?
I'll leave that to the data scientists.
I'm just so passionate about, in development countries, because to me they represent so many opportunities for data science impact. There are many, so I can say, healthcare, transportation, education, public services, but I really want to focus on two, and one in particular. To me, the critical contribution right now is education and agriculture, to me. The World Bank has estimated that the African food market will reach $1 trillion by 2030, and currently it's around 300, 400. So imagine like the growth. So demand for food is projected to at least double in the next 20, 30 years. So the question is, how can government use data science and AI to improve things like quality of land, increase the soil fertility, predict climate change, optimize water availability? So to me, that will be an interesting and fascinating journey to follow.
Yeah, I definitely second the agriculture, and especially because we've been talking today, data science about driving better decision making. And if there's anything we need on the continent, it's better decision making. Anyone else want to chip in on that one? The second question?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, uh, Marinella covered very important aspects, but I want on the industry side of things, what I want to cover is really, uh, you know, focus on building skills. Uh, you know, that data science. I'm not trying to bring down data science, but even if you don't know statistics, there are parts of the data projects that is data engineering, um, that is data visualization. If you don't like something, try out different things, and that will also help in trying to understand what do you like, and at the same time, uh, you just build your skills around it. And in terms of uh, priorities, the is I mean Africa especially has a lot of people, and the youth is really coming up. And what happens with that is, um, don't just think about solving problems, but think about also sharing your skills with other people. And what that will do is really not just train the current the people will not just solve the current problems, but they will also go ahead and train people and build them for solving future problems as well. And as mobile penetration and education really increases in terms of the reach within Africa, and that will really have an impact on how uh, data science or data just in general will really help, just elevate the development goals, the entire continent.
Thank you so much. Do we have time for one more question? I mean, I guess it depends on the question. Let's see. This is the last question. Exploitation of data can bring negative incidences, for example, in the case of misclassification in critical areas such as healthcare. Ooh, how do we deal with such problems? Not a 2-minute question, but let's Mary Grace.
Yeah, I think it's. I think one way that we could deal with those problems is um, just sense checking, certain information, data and information that comes out with other information that we know, or that's available. And that's where, my point earlier was, how and when and how do we create the space to share this, so that uh, if there's misinformation that comes out, is our reaction or our reply or our decisions based on some evidence, that we have to support, the counter. So yeah, just we getting those data sets that may say a different story.
Yeah, so you're thinking opening up data, making it more accessible, more transparency, really.
Yes.
Anyone else want to chip in quickly on that one?
Uh, I like to join, just chip in, but Marnala, you're a data scientist, so you can correct me if I'm going in the wrong direction. Uh, I mean, I don't know specific models or data science models that will help in, correcting the misclassification. But what I know is, if there are misclassification, you can try to increase the sample size, or you can, try to increase the model size, and just add more data to it. To kind of see if that can bring effective results. Uh, and probably there's something called as feature protection. I think Marnella can expand more on feature protection, but that's one way to achieve higher accuracy in terms of having dealing with such problems, especially around misclassifications of data. And now again, uh, it's a very technical question, and it requires more discussion, like a bigger discussion, and you have to go in and understand why the data is misclassified, and how can we do that. But again, this is the simple ways to do it, like increase the model size, increase the data size, have more data, and try to see if that works.
Yeah, it sounds like there's so many sides to this question, and like I said, it definitely wasn't a 2-minute question, but there's a technical side, and there's the consequences side, and like the transparency, like Mary Grace was talking about. But maybe Marina, just close us off on this one, and then we'll say bye because we are already a bit over time.
Yes, I'm happy to close. So the feature contribution index, that's how one of the most used KPIs and metrics to identify misclassification rate used by data scientists today, not just in healthcare, also in other industries, is a feature contribution index. I don't want to go too much into the details, but basically monitors how every variable that you're using in your model is contributing in that model. So is age having, for example, as much impact or as it shouldn't? So are we predicting that, or is sex, is gender more, like, are we predicting that men could have better access to services than women? So the feature contribution index. And I invite everyone, if you want to join on May, I will be having a webinar with a professor from Belgium and another colleague on this topic. So how we explain, how we understand complex machine learning models, and what are the techniques to monitor that explainability, fairness, bias assessment. So I will be sharing more on my LinkedIn on time and date and everything. But that, I'll be happy to see you there if you can join to talk more about this, or we can have another panel with Ishango.
Yeah, definitely. I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you all so much for taking this hour out to be here. We clearly could have gone on, and there's always so much to unpack. But yeah, thank you to our audience. Thank you all. Please follow our speakers on LinkedIn. Reach out to Marinella. Subscribe to her newsletter. And thank you all so, so much from all of us at Ishango.
Thanks, Eunice. Thanks,
so
Courage, and your team.
Eunice.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Lovely.
Right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.